Okay, it's 4:02. Bring this meeting to order. We'll start with roll call. Dave? Here. Robert? Brent? Yep. Carol?
Here.
John? Here. Norm? I'm here. Bill? Here. Christine? Absent. Todd? Pete? Here. And Tracy?
Here.
So I don't know if anybody had a chance to review the minutes from last week, but we're looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion.
We have a second?
Second.
Okay. We had a comment made after the meeting last night. You guys all have that in front of you? Anybody have any questions or concerns on that? Comments?
That this one that you just ran off?
Yes.
Don't think, in the last paragraph, I don't think that, you can be real specific. Well, when?
No, that's part of what I think we should have on our agenda today is to try to kind of pick a scope of what our wishes are for each area and put together a why, because we're kind of run out of time here. So
Yeah, we just have to make hard decisions.
yes. Yep.
The deadline for the millage,
Was it May 8th then?
May 8th,
Your council meeting on the 15th is when you need to adopt the resolution.
got it.
So we gotta have all this wrapped up. Right.
Yep.
So we're on to 5,
We're on to 5. So,
Mr. Chairman, go ahead.
but
You know, I was looking this over and I had this thought that, when we look at the map and everything else, we put all the yardage in each of those bays and, the main body of the water, there's projects, and these are going to be individual projects, right? That will tend to.
there may be some that could overlap at one time,
Right.
depending on finances.
But basically, project 1, 2, 3, 4, not have, maybe assigning letters, I don't know.
What we're trying to do is assign them a priority.
Right,
As a body, I think that's what we should do, is give them a priority, so if these are all number 1 priority. Now we have to figure out, we get so much money, so much funds every year. As it goes forward, some of the bigger projects can't be done in 1 year, so you need to have funds for 2 years there. So you may have to do a smaller project and
need a sub.
save some of that money forward for the next one.
That's your chair.
So, the project priority in areas, you know, since it's going to be a multi-year project. And we cannot project into the future too long. I was thinking one way to build in some flexibility would be, for example. If we said Birch Park, 7 to 10,000 yards. So we have a span, like we're gonna do 7.
Yep,
We might get to 10, but it depends on what the money's like and how much is available and the permitting and all that other stuff. So we could do, if we put a low end and an upper end, I think, and for the committee to consider, wouldn't that give us some flexibility?
it would give you some room for budgeting and
And even
it's still be, until all the soil tests have been proved by Eagle, some of these may be off the chart just because it's out of our control.
Right,
So, and then, I'll kind of get a sidebar, George, you had your testing done for the Peninsula project.
What I call Peninsula A, the east side.
The east side, correct. So you had 2 test spots that were slightly over.
One was over by 100 points, and that was arsenic,
Mhm.
at one point, and the other one was over, in selenium and arsenic, it was test point 7. I don't recall which one it was, I sent it out on the note,
You
but
did.
this is the. You wanna call it a rough draft, it's kind of real rough, it got wet and everything else out there, but. Where test point 7 was, this is Peninsula Drive, test point 7 is right here. Straight out that drive, about 150 feet, got into the water. That's the only one that failed in Selenium.
So what
Why
I,
it's there, I don't know.
what I personally wonder. Does Eagle consider all of your test sites as a sum of that area? So in other words, those two,
It would be
those
a
two,
composite of that.
right, so those two that were barely over, I'm hoping they don't throw the rest of them off because everything else checked out.
Correct.
I don't know that decision Eagle will make. But if there's a way you can try to find that out.
Dig into it a little bit.
'Cause that'll actually alter what we do. I mean, maybe they say you can do everything but those two test points. I'm not sure how close you can get to those, you know what I mean?
Well, as you and I talked, if they do that as a composite,
You're above board.
composite tests and then base tests,
Right.
and we had two composite tests fail in general out of 10, that's 80%, right?
Mhm.
And we had one bottom test, that's 90%.
Right.
Are good, so, you're right, I can ask them and see what they
Yeah, I'd like
say.
to see what they're leaning toward, because that's definitely gonna tell us what we need to do budget wise. Whether they said that as a whole, that whole thing checks out fine, you're there, or absolutely no, you can't do those two areas, they would have to be scrubbed off of the yardage. You wanna help us find, I mean, it's
Kind
split
of
hairs, but it helps.
Kind of difficult to do that, I mean,
I
there's no
understand,
marker sticking out there in the lake.
I understand that.
What are the ramifications of being over? Does that mean we would have to use a designated dump area or don't touch it or?
I think that would be more because these, heavy metals, as they're called, it's gold, it's selenium, it's all these integrants that naturally occur in nature. Those are the things I think they're most concerned about. I think they're more concerned about your PCBs, things like that, that are unnatural to a body of water or to our land. So in that degree, those that aren't heavy metals would have to go to federal landfills. And we couldn't afford to do that, but no tests have ever found that in our lake,
Okay.
none.
Okay.
Can we get a definitive answer on what happens if you got a little bit over on arsenic? Does that mean that don't touch it or?
That's why I just asked.
That's what we're talking about. Because when I tested the river, one test point out of the 7 there had arsenic. It was a little bit high. And when I called and talked to him about it, he said, well, that naturally occurs in nature. It happens.
Okay.
Okay.
With selenium, the most common source for that is petroleum operations in nature. And there are multiple abandoned oil and gas wells under the lake.
And in the project.
Tim, does anyone have a map of those? That's what I was gonna go look right now on the state's website. Because there are probably a lot of them in the peninsula area
We know of one.
where we wanna dig the most.
But that kind of goes back to what Dave's saying is, we're trying to get a priority, so. As the number, if we can agree on a priority of the areas you want to do first. I think that's where our money goes first, and then we disperse down that priority list. Try to get the most we can get done with revenue and see.
One thing I don't like about this gentleman's comment here is that we're not talking about my area, we're talking about support. And all the areas are talked about, it's just the order that we can do them financially and logistically
Right.
that we have to worry about.
Right.
And we're gonna get everything we can get.
Permitting.
We're gonna get everything we can get. It's not a question.
Could end up with one of our number one priorities being not transport because of the testing. Until you have it all tested, you don't know, but you have to start somewhere, you have to put this package together. And I think that's our best solution is to pick priority 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever it's gonna be, and we can all agree on that. It might take some back and forth to get settled on that, but I think that's where we gotta start. So then,
Well, yeah, and we also have to do it with the amount of money available.
correct,
We
So
can't,
that's-
we can't do the river,
that's
that's $300,000.
that's where Brent put together his forecast and he kind of has that
Right.
laid out.
Right.
So it shows you, these are budgets based on some quotes we had, and some budget numbers we talked to contractors for the yard. So it kind of shows you how much each area would cost us.
And you say we can't do the river, we may be able to do hydraulic in the river one year and the bag line.
You're not saying we can't do the river.
No.
So
He means like in year one.
Year one,
Year one.
we won't have the money
We
available.
won't have the money.
So you're gonna have, that's part of the scheduling later, but you have to
Right.
agree that that's a priority. And put those in order so the voters could see. If we spend our money, this is not excluded, this is the number one priority. Or these three areas are the number one priority, and then we work down a list from there, so ultimately. All this is based on a budget. We don't have all the dredging proposals yet, that haven't been put out.
Right.
So this is, the best of our knowledge, will be, that been told by various sources. Is your window of cost,
Right,
that's where you have to start.
yep,
Great.
So I think we need to, at this meeting, agree to areas. And try to put forth. The budget we wanna ask the public for. And again, Brent has three options on here. To show us kind of a running balance where you're at. At each one of these village options, how far you can go.
So, touching on that, is the column here with the numbers, not to highlight the numbers, is that a declining balance?
That's
That's like what your bank account will look like, so like year one would be red. So like say we go to the year one, you start on the 3 mils, you'd start with 281,000, and then you spend 100,000 on soil tests, so your account balance is 181. You see
Oh, I
that?
see
And
what
then
you
you
mean
spend
there.
75, so then you're 106. And then we know we don't have enough money for the 125 for Birch Park, so we have to wait till the next year. And the second year, we get 283,000. So
Where
those
does
back
that
up.
show up?
It's the orange.
down on the bottom chart.
Or colors.
Oh, the bottom.
The colors are by year.
Yeah, orange.
I got you.
It didn't work in grayscale for me.
No, mine's purple and I can't read them. Okay, I get it.
It's actually a pretty good representation of what reality could be. And priority wise on the parks, we know River's number one, I feel, and, then go to start looking at the items that are affecting the most people, the most use, and start working down the list from there, and then small projects are gonna have to get peppered in according to what we can be afforded.
So I think what Todd's trying to say is, if you have your priority list 1 through 4. You might actually do a priority 2 to fit it in with a priority 1 funding.
Just because it's a smaller amount dollar
Allocated
wise.
properly, you can do that.
And that's where the priority list will change and sometimes, the citizens see it as a definitive and. Get upset when it's changed and it's not in line with what's wrote on a piece of paper. And construction changes, is what happens. And then with all the variables we're looking at, we have George's variable, we have Tim Oil Well variable, we have a lot of variables that we're just trying to come up with a list right now to present to people, and it all could change and all this could be for naught.
That's why I think the priority list, to me,
We have to emphasize, though, there are no excluded areas, it's just the boots on the ground may move it around to get it done.
Right. Right.
No, this is a list I put together.
and it would be, I think too, is that we have to show everyone, and that's part of our job is to educate everybody before the election. That, we may do only a couple of small projects and then collect some funds so that we can do a bigger one.
Correct.
It may not be, I think people are under the misconception that, oh, we're just gonna get the money and well, there's the 5 million or $3 million and we can do it all in 1 year, and it's not.
That's exactly what everyone's doing.
This is a huge project.
What's the 12
It'll
year
take
project?
6 or 12 years
It needs to
easily.
go 12 years.
And, the variables in there are just astounding because there was no such thing as COVID 12 years ago.
No, and that's the other thing I want everybody to be mindful of is these millage rates. Say we were able to get 3 mills passed, you're gonna collect $3.5 million. $3.5 million, you won't totally collect that money over a period of 12 years.
Correct.
nobody can forecast what any of this is gonna cost 12 years from now.
Correct.
Which is why I
A gallon of
said,
gas was $2 4 years ago.
yeah, we could have a range of
Right.
what we can do. This is the minimum that we've got projected, this is the
Right.
maximum we could do, depending on when it comes in and. Because geez, we're gonna have to save some, we're gonna have to do some small ones to get the river done.
That's exactly right. When you prioritize, you're gonna have to pick on some small ones first. To save money towards the big project, of which one of the larger one in scale is the river.
Right, and that's
You're
why,
gonna have to hold that money, rat hole it till you get next year's
that's why
money.
Brent's forecast, I think, makes sense, because then you can see. We're projected that one of these projects costs X amount of dollars. Even if you do something on a turn, you have to set that money aside so that
Correct,
it can still be done as a number one priority. So
correct,
you can't spend the money on priority 4 and then go, whoops, we ran out of money for priority 1.
exactly.
So that's why the forecast is
I think
key.
the cogent point is too, is to show progress every year. Like, it's going to be done
Yeah.
every year.
I think 1 year could be a bunch of testing. I mean,
Yeah.
because the tests are good for 7 years, correct?
10.
10 years.
So
So
permits
that's
are
gonna
good
be
for
year
five.
one.
I feel like you
Before
want
we
to
get
test
the money.
everything. And then if it comes back that these 5 areas can't be done,
Right,
then those can go away.
Right.
Because it's out of our hands. Then you can focus your funds on what you can actually have left.
and we have to also make sure that everyone that we educate the public in knowing that, hey, if it costs less, we can roll it back.
Yes, that's what.
It may
Tim
not
said.
take
We
it
can
all.
sunset this at any year, correct? If the project's completed.
And
Completed,
also,
everything was completed on this list somehow magically in 6 years.
Or if they said you couldn't touch these 3 places,
And eliminate them.
Right.
and we could get the rest done, okay,
Faster.
faster.
and we also have to have a good drawdown, except for the.
Well, there's the other factor, there's a lot of
And that's
factors. here.
completely on Mother Nature.
Yeah,
Another
two
variable.
years ago, the dam was open all winter, or 3 years ago, and it never went down.
We never went down.
So,
Yeah, it's a wet, it's nasty.
okay,
I suggest we move forward with what Brent has on the list and kind of compare it with Norm's list and match it.
I mean,
And just call it.
there's a whole core of people here. This is the list I put as a priority
Yeah.
and why I believe it's a priority.
And then I'm next to Norm's list and Brent's list. I kind of have the both slip list wrote down next to them and, you know, it shows that we're trying to concentrate on more of a majority of people and how it's affecting how many people.
Fine, the river was priority for me because that's, everything that's there is eventually gonna end up in the lake anyway.
That's right. That is number one. I think it always has been with everybody.
My theory for both boat ramps is because that's where everybody puts their boats in, out of the water.
That's number one.
The river area was another boat ramp, so you got all 3 boat ramps as priority 1.
Handled, yes.
I feel, you know, Peninsula Drive is a huge project, but that's the main area of the lake for me that everybody does their counterclockwise rotation, they go through that area. So if we can get that area cleaned up a little deeper, I think we're gonna save money or hopefully save money on weed control, but you're also gonna spread the boat traffic out and keep everybody from going in the deeper water when they're doing their tubing and skiing. Because every time, if you were to go in some of the areas in Peninsula, your kids fall off the tube and you're gonna put them back on and take off. As soon as you come up on plane, the back of your boat's going down into that rock or that dirt.
Whatever it is.
So, at least I do when I take my kids tubing, or my kids tubing, I go out to the river channel and then come back up on plane. But that's usually where currently boats are at. So if we can spread that traffic out, I think it makes more room for everybody to enjoy the water. And then you had my area 2 priorities, 2 priority areas for the priority 2 areas. For Lincoln and Essex, I think Essex is bad, but I think Lincoln is worse personally, as far as depth. I think Essex has, you know, it's a park that gets used a lot. There's a portage on there, people pull up and use the beach. I think there's a little bit more depth there. I think Lincoln, to me personally, will be above Essex, but they're both priority 2. I had power on there. It's not used by a bunch of people, but if we were gonna do something on Peninsula, that may be an access route. For
Well, it
trucks,
is an access
for trucks, and on
Yeah.
the lake. I mean, it's small, it's only 400 yards, and it's not gonna affect, what is there, 4 or 5 boats there, but
Right.
if it gives us a way to get material from the lake out,
That's what it's for.
you can't drive a truck through there, it goes straight out.
Right.
So that may even have to be one of the first year things, even though it's priority two, might get moved to priority one. I don't.
That actually may get built to access the bottom and then taken out
Correct.
and then get built again when we're ready to start that
would give
project
us a direct
again.
shot to the lagoon.
So we get straight out on Murray.
So
So
I,
if that won't be a permanent structure or a permanent build for the entire term, I guess you could say.
so, the priority list. It's an explanation, we have to be able to explain this, the priority list doesn't mean that they're going to be done first.
Correct.
And that's what we have to
But
make
money
that
has to be set
distinction.
aside for those. That's
Right.
that's what I mean by priority.
Right. And that's what I'm
Right,
agreeing
explain.
with you, but we have to explain it to people so they can understand that, no,
Correct.
just because it says priority three doesn't mean it may not be done the first year. It may be done the first year, or let's say priority two area might be done and not all of priority one. It's not going to be, we're gonna do all priority one, and then we'll do what priority two the next year and priority three. That's not how this is going to work. And we're very close to it. We know what we're talking
Well,
about,
you can't-
but we have to explain it.
Finance.
We have to be able to explain it to people that know this, just because it says priority,
And then, see,
Equal order.
doesn't mean, there you go.
I went farther on my property down to, 3 and 4. I mean, Birdie Park and Queens Park. I talked to Bill about Queens Park and I've looked at Birdie Park. Birdie Park, a lot of that is deeper until you get back into the base of. So we have estimates of yardage on that map.
Right,
That could probably be shrunk by 50%.
well, that's,
And Bill thought the same thing for Queens Park, as part of that leg that comes down. It's
right,
deeper, but the part that's farther upstream is shallower, so maybe you take the bottom half off. And do the top half for the parking areas for that park, it does get shallow there. I don't walk that area when the drawdown's down, but I know you do.
Yeah.
So I don't know how far around that corner we need to go.
Basically, my experience, you just have to do it where they park the boat.
Cause the other one has
It's
that
like
steep bank.
200. 50 feet or 300 feet, something.
So there's,
About 300, yeah.
there's ways to move. We can change this map after we agree on priorities and shrink some of those areas. To try to get additional funds to hopefully move farther down the list is what I thought process is. And Whispering Pines and Round and Tormino, Outlook D, they're all areas that affect fewer people. I had originally put River and Round down there because there is those two creeks that come through there. And when the water's down, you can see the sandy bottom, but you can also see the ledge of sludge on top of there. I don't know how much that washes into the lake. It doesn't have the flow that River does, but it still probably impedes our lake some. So that's why we're going to put on that map. But I think my original map that I did was a wish list to get everything done, and maybe that wish list is bigger than what our budget is, but it was a starting point, so.
well, I think if we put a range of yardage, that might cover that,
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just a range of yardage.
I think we erred on the high side
Right,
so that we can
right,
parse those down.
We also
Right.
went into one of the bays a couple of years ago, and the year before, there was a lot of sediment in there. Following year, we went out and the sediment left, where it went, I got no idea. But it moved. And it does shift around a little bit, so once you get the top end done, where you're not having the sediment coming down, that should alleviate some of the movement and increase the flows, if you will.
We're always gonna get the sediment coming down.
It's gonna come down. It's
Always
gonna,
gonna have sediment coming.
it's
Yeah.
gonna come down.
And that was part of my thought was, if we can get this done, hopefully cheaper, I don't know if that's possible. But if we kept the millage for all 12 years, maybe you can go back and catch up with some of the areas.
get the other 2,000 yards that you started with.
Or to fill back in,
Right, right,
so.
But we could, in according to your list here, we could do on the first or second year, do some of the priority four stuff because they're smaller projects.
If you have the funding for the others,
Funding.
I don't want to steal money from priority to.
Somebody looking at this saying, I'm not gonna get this done until 5 years down the road, that doesn't.
No one's gonna get what they want out of this. It's gonna be best, what's best for everybody. There's all these maps, there's nothing in front of my house. I mean, I'm not getting it out of this. I mean, other than the Peninsula Drive, I wanna use for my boating, but I'm not, I'd love to see it right in front of my house, but it doesn't make sense. It just, if someone's not gonna be happy, I understand that. Some people are gonna be ecstatic. Some people are gonna say, you know what, my neighbor got it all, I got nothing. I don't know how to fix that.
Well, at the end of the project is when we judge that,
We'll
not
have,
at the very beginning.
we'll have a healthy lake at the end of the project. So,
And the goal is to try to get it all cleaned up.
So, I mean,
It's 50 years in the making. It's gonna take more than a year or two to fix it.
from my standpoint, I think we need to have some type of a vote on these priority lists or make changes to them so we can get that finalized today. And then let's try to talk about what we think we need for village to make this possible.
We also need a heading that gives more than dredging priority, because this is misleading.
Okay.
It's based on millage funds available, or whatever words are appropriate, but we need to be,
This
have
is
that.
just a list. I mean, we can alter it however.
Because obviously people are looking at our documents and then responding, so we
Right.
need to make sure that this says enough that they understand what we're doing with this list.
So if anybody wants to make comments on the areas that I have on there. Let's talk about that.
Can I make
All the
comment?
areas are on here, right?
There's a few missing, according to Brent's list.
Yeah, there's Minnie's not on there, Peninsula,
Peninsula's on here.
no, I'm sorry, not Peninsula, what's that bottom one called, Queensway?
Please put it on there.
No, no, no,
West
Queensway,
River?
deadline?
Queensway design this.
Greensway's down there on priority 3 area.
All the Queensway dead ends.
No, that's Queensway Park.
That's what I told her.
So when we had our last meeting, you guys told me many, everybody here told me that many didn't either. I was told last meeting. That's not what you told me last time.
Well, it's not, I didn't have a say in it, remember I left early.
Everybody told me you can take a vote back in there all the way back to the very, except for the very end of it.
It's,
If that's such a small project, you can fit it in somehow.
Talking about money,
Yes.
yeah, Minnie,
isn't that where the,
that's where you park your boat.
Where Tim
yeah, I
said,
know, but isn't that the end of that where they have that, dry hydrant in the fire department?
Yes.
No.
yeah. No, no, not there, it's on the other side.
No, it's not the other Queensway.
It's on Queensway is,
Minnie's in behind the log house over there.
Yes.
they can be added back to the list. I'm not opposed
No,
to that,
there's no hydrant there. The hydrant's at Queensway.
but Bishop's over.
Correct.
Or my, Paris, sorry.
correct, yes.
So we can add those back in my eyes, they would both be a 4 personally, whether you guys agree to that or not.
Sure, that could be down towards the bottom.
And then I don't know that, you know, originally I had them from the start of the bay to the mouth of the bay.
No, they don't need to be like that.
Right. So
And that's part of that variable that you're talking about of
Queen's Dead End,
that it could be 3,000 or 1,500 yards to 3,000.
right, which makes sense.
Until we jump in the middle of that, we actually don't really know for sure.
Right.
Because you wouldn't want to walk across Minnie Bay when it's dry.
Well, sure, it's never.
It's-
No, none of them.
It's gonna be, you can get down the sides, it's sandy, but you get out 15 feet and you're in mud. So it's,
Yeah, that's
Cut off when we need permits for them.
That's 6 feet deep though.
out in the middle it is,
Yeah.
once you get out in the middle, but
Yeah.
it's getting to it.
So we agree we want to add those back in. What about the order?
Well, I think Carol is thinking the same way I was, and it's kind of like a punch list. You got your house done, but now the carpenter comes by, he's got a punch list, and he doesn't know exactly, he's got these things he'd like to happen in this order, but they may not happen in this order because of materials or availability of stuff, so we have to make that clear. I think you prioritize, somebody had to make a decision, I'm glad you did. You and Brent got that together, and I think that's a great idea.
So
But we have the explanation here.
if you or Carol want to reword it, I'm not opposed to that, you know what I mean? I mean,
Carol's a wordsmith.
But I mean, you know, I agree, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I just,
Priority has funds available, how's that work? Priority.
Well, part of it, yeah.
How about areas considered for dredging and have a priority one only and call it the river and the 3 launch ramps? Because people will understand that, and then all the rest of the areas below that will be included. And then.
And
As
now,
funds
Not
become
rate
available.
those per se.
I think part of my priority thought process was to try to get the most areas that are used by the most amount of people. Cause there's people that don't use a lot of these small parks, but at some point, everybody has to use one of these ramps to get the boat in the water. So, you know,
that's why I think the list is great, is just that we have to make the case to the folks during the sales of this millage proposal that, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen the first year.
yeah.
You know, I mean-
I understand that, what you're trying to say, we have to,
Well, because we had misunderstandings at the last meeting with public comment, and they just couldn't get over the fact that, you know, they didn't think that we ought to do anything until we saved enough money to do the park, Riviera.
I think by the time you save that money, it's gonna be worse than it is.
Well, no,
I don't know if you can keep pace with,
but that's the kind of thing I'm trying to. I know I keep harping on it, and I know you guys know, because we're in the middle of it, but if you're just looking at this for the first or second time and saying, geez, they're not gonna do that? How come they're not doing my place? It's only this big.
yeah.
And we have to provide reasons for that,
Yes,
like
yes,
weather.
So possibly, Carolyn, if you want to do that, I mean, I think, you know, it's the funds that we have available to do these projects.
Permits.
And then, you know, the permits, to find out if we can do those areas. And then we're trying to get the most bang for our buck as far as having your residents, so we're not trying to play favorites for
right,
Joe at Minnie or somebody at Essex, you know, like, you gotta try to make sure this works for everybody equally.
That eyeball test goes a long way. When they see something's done,
Yes.
at the boat launches.
That's why I thought starting something smaller if we have to, even though the river is our. In my eyes, the number one priority, but
Oh,
that's,
absolutely.
you have to wait a couple of years to get the funds to do that. So I don't. And the fact that it's gonna happen during full because it'll be a vacuum dredge. Maybe that starts the second summer rather than not waiting till the fall. That could start earlier, whenever they collect the taxes.
That's true.
And some of the smaller projects may get done simultaneously.
Yeah, I don't know, I don't think any of us knows whether there's gonna be one contractor or 3. And then we want to come out the bids and maybe, you know, Joe Blow is incredibly cheap on one area and way expensive somewhere else, and we have to split those up, or maybe somebody says if I do more projects, I'll get your price per square foot down because I'm getting a bigger contract. But then we have to verify that he can actually do the work in the timeline allowed. Just because you're the price, you can't do it.
So I would say the river would be top priority because of the logistics of the whole lake.
Yep.
And then the boat.
That's why I've got it on top of my priority 1 list.
Yep.
Well, Norm, just adding up on your priority one, based on Brent's $11 a cubic yard. South Park in Birch Park would be 192,000 roughly. For a year 1, for instance. Leaving Riviera as a standalone for hydraulic. For 350.
But for 350, you need 2 years of.
I know, see that 192, if you look at your mills. Subtract 192 off it, it's like a 3.5, subtract 192 off of 327. That's your remaining balance that's left in your kitty, if you will. So you got 127,000 carrying over to year 2. It'll add in 327 again. For 331.
Because Brent's first 3 items, they're pretty much lining up with what Trevor's saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly, in the 4 mil range,
Yeah,
then it changes a little different in the less money.
yeah,
So
that's it,
that
I
would
was
be
looking at
natural.
the 3.5, yes.
So if we're kind of in agreement on the order minus the verbiage or the priority.
I think.
and you need to change, I don't think we should use the word priority anymore, no more priority. Cause everybody
Yeah.
wants to be priority. I think it needs to be off. Schedule 1 area, schedule 2 areas, schedule 3, schedule 4. And then it allows us to adapt the schedule. as opposed to priorities. Nobody wants their priorities.
You need to understand, it's not deleted from the schedule, we may have to think on our feet a little bit to get it done with the funds available.
Right, that's the whole point, and then we'll develop some words that go in with that, so they understand, we all understand the schedule.
Yeah, this is better, grab that lunchtime.
Along the lines
Yeah.
of the areas are subject, to, available funds or something along.
Permitting and funds, and these are the things that they have, they'll be done according to the availability of funds.
I think
It's the fund balance
I
that
think if you
matters,
want
Say fund balance, don't say availability,
Yeah.
because they're
Yeah.
for that.
right, they already
You
said
wanna
that.
If they think it's available and they already think it's a huge pot.
Fund balance.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
I think you should put maybe it's the number one schedule, will just be the testing, because then that tells us if
Perfect,
it's even worth having in that particular area in the budget any longer.
yeah, good idea, which is what we have already here.
Well,
Yeah, that's
before
on
we do
premise.
that,
And it is
based on
ordered.
that, because they've never found the PCB, the bad stuff out here. I'm thinking that there is a good chance that the arsenics, seleniums, things like that aren't really gonna be that that heavy on it based on percentage of the test results.
Yeah, but we have to know that.
I know that, but before we make that a final copy, keep it in draft until I speak to the DEQ or Eagle to see what they tell me. Cause they say, yeah, no, that's not that bad a thing.
That's something you could do,
Right.
make a phone call tomorrow for us,
Right.
or email. or whatever you do.
Yes, now give a call back.
Right.
But I think I call back Friday or Monday. So-
Right, but we have to get that.
But,
call.
but you get that rolling, but hold it in draft until I find out from them.
Okay.
And then
It will
let's-
be
like I said,
reflected
it
in the
comes up
minutes
with-
anyway.
PCBs or something, forget that one.
Right.
But
Keeping in mind, we only have two areas really tested, Peninsula and up by the river. That's all we have currently tested,
that is correct.
so there's more
Well, now,
testing to do.
there's 7 more test points I have to do in the river
I
too.
need a list of those, please.
List of what?
The plate, schedule one testing, what's getting tested? That's our first item. I need a list of what we're gonna test.
I would test based on this budgeting schedule, I would test. Well, the river's been tested, Peninsula's been tested, I would test South Park and Birch would be tested immediately.
Do
Okay,
that.
so the river's already tested?
Yeah.
That's tested.
Or
You're
But you
gonna
have
have to go-
7 more places to do it on the
I
river?
still have to do bottom
Yes,
tests in the river,
It wasn't required last time.
base test.
I don't got it.
Okay, all right, tell me
These are
the kinds of tests.
I don't have those yet
No,
because
no,
I don't
no,
have.
base, the words, I need words.
The types of
Words.
tests.
The base test, or what, depth test, what? Give me words, please.
Okay. Requirements of Eagle, or Eagle requirements for permitted projects are a composite test of the sediment samples and a base test at that same location at the dredge projected restoration depth,
Bottom of the hole.
And base means the bottom.
the bottom. You're going down 3 feet, you gotta screw that thing down 3 feet. And then try to pull it out.
And the bottom.
No, I think we're looking for volunteers, too. George amended. Right.
Now I need a nap. And a base, which is the bottom sample, so it's big requirements.
So 2 test points are required at each test point. 2 tests are required at each test point.
Each point. Okay, so Eagle requirement for each point, there's a composite test sample and a base test sample for all sites. Correct?
For all
test
test
For all
points.
test points.
10 or 7 are required
For each area.
for everything up to 1,000, or excuse me, 10,000 cubic yards.
Huh?
Yeah,
Seven
yeah,
test
drill
points
seven
are
holes.
required,
7 holes, that's what I need. 7 holes
are
for each one.
required up to 10,000 cubic yards,
Less than 10,000.
or less than 10,000, up to, yeah.
All right.
And 1 per 1,000 cubic yards over 10,000.
Every 1,000 yards over is another test.
Oh,
So in other words.
Or every 10,000 cubic yards, I'm sorry.
I got 10,000.
Okay,
No, but every 10,000 more
I'll put above.
yes,
above, okay.
above.
For the sake of expedience, can we back Birch Park off to 10,000 as opposed to 11?
I think so. Yeah, when I did that map, you can see on that map, I pretty much covered that entire area.
We can go.
See, I
Even
believe,
if it was only 100 yards wide, when it ran out. That gets all the boat traffic out, and clear space.
To expedite things, we can back Birch Park off to 10,000 or
we can
less.
back it up to 9. I think it's probably gonna push closer to 8,
Okay.
8,500 to 9.
Keep,
That's
keep
my
in
point.
mind, any location over 10,000 is an EPA permit as well as a state permit. So if you go over 10,000 for that area, you have to get the permit from the EPA as well.
So we should be trying to
You
stay.
should be trying to stay below 10,000 in your location.
Every place we can.
Which I
Where
think
did
is-
that, where did that come in?
All right.
Just-
Yeah, we'll be good at
Anything over 10,000, if you break down.
never told me that.
George,
Okay. you can do
Birch
that.
Park's not that bad.
No, it's just-
Okay.
It goes up,
Schedule one.
flat, it doesn't.
Yeah, it's like-
Where I park my boat, it's not that bad.
Fund balance of money. We've got some funds.
Okay, so we're in agreement on the schedule then?
I am.
I like it.
What do we wanna talk about? A possible millage number, to see, I mean, we have three millage rates in front of us that Brent put together for dollar bills. Wanna look at those and see what makes the most sense?
We can tweak some things too, if people would like to do, I don't know if you look at like 3 mills or even on 2.75. You can do Birch Park before South Park. The South Park right now, all I have it's year 1, but you can flip flop those. You have the money, like we could switch the order of those two.
Yeah,
And that would make more available.
Change.
I think as long as they're,
Progression of cash flow.
on the schedule one areas, you can move them.
Yeah.
Around or.
Yeah, good idea. And
Yeah, you
then-
could either do Birch or South Park along with the past year 1.
Yeah, try to make it fit the funding that we could collect. But the funding we can collect is where we need to move to now to see. I mean, obviously, the more money we can collect, the more areas we can do, but there's a limit to what people can tolerate.
Yeah.
People have their own budget to worry about.
Did I see the paper of where, the taxable value and how it was
Yeah,
affecting
Tim had that in.
individuals?
And then.
I don't know what page it was, but.
Is there any way to get input from the community as far as how much they're willing to go? I mean,
With the timeline we're on, probably not.
So I think the last go round, when we had dog parks and sidewalks, I think that was 275, Tim.
Correct.
And I think that was so close to passing, I think it would have passed without that portion of it. So,
And that was not a very comprehensive dredging plan compared to this.
right,
no,
Oh.
I mean, I would like,
That was just the base.
personally, I would like to try to get 3. I would be for more than 3, but I don't know if you get that passed, but I think if you get 3. The amount it's gonna cost the average home is not much difference than 2.5. But it brings us in another, $600,000.
And it makes progress that much more
Yeah, it
visible,
takes 12 years to get there, but it's,
but it still makes progress a lot
and I
more
think it
visible.
makes more people happy in the end, because they get.
We don't get it passed, we don't get any progress.
Okay.
So I don't know what anybody else's thoughts are, but that would be,
I think that's a good thought. It's not the most expensive, but it's.
it's kind of in the middle,
It's the middle.
you know?
Then it says a house, with a taxable value between 75,000, 100,000 is $258 for the year. So,
You gotta double the taxable with your actual.
Right. Over $20 a month.
yeah,
if you was the $100,000 one, you'd do $300.
yeah. Another, what, $30, $40?
But $100,000 taxable is a $200,000 home. So, and then Tim, I think the next page, Tim has. The average actual value of houses in the neighborhood. So it says, for Tim's research, 75 or 81% of the houses in the community have a taxable value of 75,000 or less. So they're looking at, $200 to $300 a year is what they could cost them
At the cap, at the high end.
at the high end.
Because that's all 1,983 parcels that go from the $1,500 vacant lot to the, $150,000 home.
Right.
You have 287 parcels that have a taxable value greater than 100,000.
So if you look at it, at the 287 parcels at 100,000 or greater, it's still less than $1 a day. Which, I mean, it's still $300, but. I think everybody's.
Prices on like a gas tank for one
A week,
week. It depends on what you drive, I guess.
I drive too much. But yeah, I just think that that's a reasonable number, if anybody. Here has a different thought process,
I think 3 mills is. It's a little more than we asked for last time,
but I think we're all getting what we want this time, but or hopefully.
the scope of the project, as far as lake dredging,
It's much bigger.
is multiple times bigger.
Right.
Yeah, we never even thought about Peninsula
Right,
with the other one.
right.
It was thought of, it just, why not, it didn't seem in the realm of possibility.
If you need it, I'd make a motion that we, go for 3 mills in our ballot.
We need a motion, correct, Tim?
I wouldn't do that.
But
I think because we can shut this off. When we've done our projects. I think we should go for the 3.5. Knowing that we can spend that money, we'll have more money coming in up front, maybe able to accomplish our to-do list that much quicker. And then cut it off earlier instead of going to 12 years. Just my thought.
Keep in mind, we gotta get it passed.
I know, I mean, I think that's maximum. It would be wonderful, we could say 10, but I know you cannot do that. You lose the buy-in on it. But
Well,
because of the
thing
scope
about
of
getting
this
it done
project,
sooner is you can get it probably done cheaper because costs are gonna continue to rise.
they're gonna go up and up and up.
But I'm just trying to find a number that's tolerable to the community,
I don't disagree.
and I'm not. There's a whole group of people here, that was just my thought. Everybody here thinks differently, then that's why we're here.
you think 275 is better?
No, I think,
No,
I think
please go.
3 is the floor.
Okay, good, all right. Got it. Okay.
I feel we should ask for as much as we get, of course, but there's always that, we're not gonna get everybody to respond positively.
I think a lot above 3 and you're gonna reach a saturation point there.
I'm kind of,
I agree.
and with John on that, we're gonna reach a saturation point, if $300 isn't a lot to some people, let's say the person, with the $200,000 house, $300 is not a lot, and yes, it's reduced for the person with the lower amount, and so it shouldn't be as substantial, but it's linear, it's the same ratio. And so everybody kind of is gonna feel the same effect on it. Eventually. Correct, about the same percentage. Having more and being able to do it faster will look better to the public, of course, and having things completed sooner.
I do like Norm's comment, if the faster we get it done, the cheaper it's gonna be, because
It's
And we don't know what inflation's gonna do in the next month, let alone the next 12 years. And so, I've seen, construction materials inflate times 10 in a month and a half. And so, and they don't deflate that fast.
They're coming back now, they're just like.
They're not that fast.
They're never gonna go all the way.
It'll never go all the way down. And then this is the same world as that. And trucking will never continue to get cheaper. It'll always get more expensive. And the same with equipment and fuel and everything.
Be a lot of diesel fuel burn for this project.
I think where we're at right now is between 3 and 3.5, and is there a consensus within the board here right now?
I think with inflation thoughts, we ought to be looking at the bigger number. And then just trying to explain that somehow. say we're going for this number based on. We think inflation is gonna be at this rate, that's 7% for the next 10 years, and then the cost of this project is gonna increase.
Jim, do you have to have a fixed number on that ballot?
The last thing we wanna be faced with is having to have more money.
I know, but if you don't, if you.
I know,
It gets voted down,
I
you
get
get
you.
nothing.
Yeah.
I get you,
Yeah,
Conundrum.
I get it.
I agree with Todd about 3 would be the minimum I'd be looking for, but I don't know how much more the traffic will bear. People are hurting out there a little bit, and but if we can show them a product, maybe we can get more.
Then that would require going back later in 5-7 years and doing this all over again, potentially. And that would be a tough run at that point in time, unless it turned out so awesome that everybody was begging us to do more, which I doubt.
Right.
So do we want to agree on judge's schedule and table a number between 3 and 3.5 for a vote? You know, the vote has to happen next week, or next meeting.
yes.
Well, we've got a motion in a second.
Already, did you make a
Yeah.
motion for 3?
And I second
And you
it.
second it, so we either have to jump that proposal or edit it.
Or John could remove his second on the motion.
He could what?
He could remove his second on the
Oh,
motion.
take it, and then it dies for lack of a second?
Yeah.
Okay.
Could we, as a committee, what about asking Tim his thoughts on that? Being in the position he's in and the knowledge of the village people.
I'd love
Well,
to
he
hear
may
Tim's
not, but I mean,
thoughts,
he's got an opinion too. I mean, I throw mine out is
You don't wanna hear all of them.
this.
We're at that point.
3 is a much more palatable sell politically. 3.5 is a tougher sell politically.
Yes. Especially since we were at 2.75 before and we had other things included and we thought that was enough.
I think the higher you go, the more detail you're going to have to present on the front end of the project. And then quite candidly, without permits in hand from Eagle, I don't know if that's detail that we can provide.
Exactly. Testing done.
You know, so you're asking, you know, the average homeowner at 3.5 in good faith to get you $336 a year when you don't have a concrete plan yet. You know,
Well,
sorry to be the ray of sunshine.
that's why, you know, it's important that we have the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important that we have a variance on all the bays, like we get from 200 yards to 400 yards for mini, from 6,000 yards.
Yeah,
to-
I can make changes to that map.
That's what I mean.
It'll show, so we have the current map. I can take that same map and shrink it into those bays down to the range.
Okay.
So you can physically kind of see
Mhm.
what that would potentially look like,
Right,
but then it gives you the upper range, the low range.
right.
Most of those bays. Heavier muck, deeper muck.
Is offshore,
Inside,
right,
is at the end of it.
yeah.
Yeah.
To my knowledge.
Where the wind pushes.
I don't think you can, like, promise people a certain amount of yards. I
No,
think we just have to allocate the dollars and we'll do our best to, you know, this is our
Until you put
estimated.
a shovel in the dirt.
Whatever we're doing is gonna be one a heck of a lot better than it was.
And right now that yardage is for our information and what we're trying to do here,
I mean,
really.
on the flip side, like, you know, what if we get some other bids and we're down to $10 a yard? You know, that's gonna change things a lot. So are we gonna spend the same amount of money or are we just gonna go to the yards?
I would say if you can get more for the same amount of money, get more.
That's, I would say too.
That's why I
Spend the
think
money.
you allocate the money and if, you know, it's the costs are 10% higher, then you might have to cut 10% of the yardage.
That would be the way to do it and what,
Kinda,
yeah, what we're talking about by providing a range.
yeah. Like the yards are good for us, like to kind of allocate the money, but I think we gotta turn that into money.
Yeah.
You're
I
saying
think
we're
it's around the
spending-
world, what that's gonna be to get all the.
the folks already know the yardage though.
Mhm.
Yeah, if you only got enough money for a dozen eggs, that's all you're buying.
Yeah.
You still buy 5 dozen eggs for $1, $5 not.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, Brent, but I think that that's already out there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
You
I
know, that's
agree.
why, I'm not,
you could do an estimated yardage.
there you go, that'd be a better word, you say,
Better words.
That's, you
that's
know,
a better word.
and
So
then-
do you want to withdraw your second and
Yeah.
put your second next meeting? Or-
Yes, we'll go with the millage for next meeting and start getting some of these figures. Are we gonna try to do more testing between now and the next meeting? Is your auger coming?
It's supposed to be here the 24th.
You're never gonna be able to get all these test points done.
Oh, you gotta get them done and get them shipped in.
That's not gonna
I
happen.
don't know if it makes sense to test anything else to get the millage approved. Otherwise, you're spending money.
Well, we just spent $8,800, so.
Yeah, we spent darn near $9,000 for
Well, like I say, you're gonna spend another $9,000, find out the millage failed, and then you spend $18,000 for testing, and you went nowhere.
Right, and you don't need that information. What you need is the money
Not
then.
unless we got something to do with it, and if we put a shovel on the ground, we'll need it, but. Test
I
it good
think
for
the
10 years.
testing doesn't go, and I mean, if this millage gets approved this fall, even though we don't have the funds, I think. You can start testing.
Yeah, I think I should go ahead, once I get this 8-foot auger, I should go ahead and do the base test for the river again.
Finish that testing.
I wanna finish that project,
I
or
agree with
finish that site,
I agree with that.
get that done, and then I'll have 2 complete areas done, whether we do anything with them or not,
Correct.
today or tomorrow, and for 10 years, well, 5 years, we'll have it.
What's the projection usually of, you do the test, you get it in, they get it back to you, then does a permit follow?
No, you go through and look at your test points, you map it out. You look at your test points to see, make sure everything's good or
Yeah.
close. And then you can take that, when you write your permit up, it's
Okay.
about a 5 or 6 page document, take pictures and all this kind of stuff, draw the bottom. What you intend to excavate off the current bottom. And submit all that with your test results. And so you'd have to also do your aerial map, so to speak, like I did down at Peninsula, to show where those test points are, so they can have an idea of where 3 was, it was high in arsenic, and 7 was in completely different areas, was high in arsenic and selenium. So, you know, if we had a line of them that was high in arsenic, that's where the eyebrows would go up, or selenium, that kind of thing. But since it's 2 random areas, 150 feet apart from each other.
So how much time does it take then after that? Have you experienced how much time it takes?
Smaller permits usually take about 30 to 45 days.
Okay.
With this being a red, as Tim called it, a EPA permit.
Yeah,
It will go to it
That's
will be
different.
submitted to, Bay City. And then they would forward it, I think it would maybe then be above them to approve, and it would be shipped to Lansing. And then they would approve it. So I don't know what that duration is, it could be 90 days. I have no idea, I've never had one done like that.
and it's only for 10,000 or more than 10,000.
More than 10,000.
Testing agencies, private agency, we get that testing done, then we pay them to submit for our permits, and then it's 45 days or better to get her back.
Yeah.
But, and the testing right now is what? What was the last time, 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Wasn't bad, but that may be seasonal, they may have a higher workload later in the year. We don't know,
They have 1 test person down in Brighton,
yeah,
so.
but he's gotta work with the workload he's got coming in at the time.
Well, kind of, because they have certain people do certain tests, certain, I guess, engineers, you'd call them, chemists. Or something to do certain tests on the samples. And so they're all kind of specific. And then you have 1 person, like would be the project manager for each sample. That manages and collects all those back and puts it in the data field and then ships it back out to the. So.
Okay. So
So we're back to what?
Should we?
Already?
he took his motion off the
Right.
table.
Yep.
So if Carol wants to work on the schedule, the dredging
No
schedule,
dialogue on it.
Yep, get some
You can
words.
you
Yep.
can email it back and forth, we can make comments on the
Yes,
next
please.
meeting.
Yeah.
And then George is gonna work on trying to get the answer on the testing we had
Yeah.
done previously, what that actually means in layman's terms, what we can or can't do with that test.
Right.
So that would be part of the newsletter too,
Correct.
all those scheduled.
I think it should be.
So,
You can wait till the next meeting for the newsletter.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, and so regarding the newsletter, it's in there for you guys to kind of see the style and format that I'm thinking of. My view on this project is we need to send a newsletter that is only this project, that highlights this project and this project alone.
right,
You know, so this is a standalone, it's a condensed version of the grand plan that you guys put together. That's got the community meeting dates we're gonna do in the summer, it's got the millage kind of, you know, breakdown on what it would cost you. Where to go for more information, that kind of stuff, but, you know, this needs to have its own information stream apart from, you know, fireworks and streets and other stuff that we're doing. This is its own line of communication.
And then Brent, are you gonna redo this?
Yep,
Will you change it from priority to schedule or something up at your title?
I was just gonna scratch it right off the list. We don't even
I like
have
that
any
even
of
better.
it.
It's just areas.
But,
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
but for conversation's sake, I won't be here next meeting. But I was gonna do a comparison similar to this, but with, 3 mils and 3.5. I guess the order of how we wanna do it would be the next thing on that left column.
Leave it.
Well, Brent, unless,
You have the priorities that the first 3 or 4 are the
If
same.
everybody's on board with that. for
With the
most part,
schedule,
Yeah.
Just use that,
just put this in there, can you?
doesn't exclude anything, at least it puts it out there
Right.
at the estimated yardage we calculated. What that would cost, so that if that cost is way more than 3 mills, people can see that there's gonna have to be some type of a change.
Yeah.
The only thing is that, the Peninsula Drive project, like, if you look at it, like, that bogs down our activity for so many years. I don't know if you wanna move that down the list, but, it still gets done.
I was thinking that George could ask if that could be broke into maybe a multi-year thing, or maybe a couple different permits, just because.
that's why I think if we break it down into
Because of
sections,
funding.
I think we can still do it.
Yeah.
As one huge project, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of pay for it all at once.
Yeah.
And I saw your list, Brent, how you had it, and even on the first one, with all the purple, it does suck up a lot of it because it's the major part of the yardage, of course. And,
So
it's represented, I feel, on your chart here and showing us what it's doing, but everybody's not gonna understand it.
Right.
Well, I think if you could ask them how that could be separated, George, because they may say, well, it's still one project. 'cause
Year
it's all-
1, year 2, year 3, can we have 3 separate permits?
Right.
Separate test results?
Just for the simple fact that dollar bills are dollar bills, we may not be able to do this entire thing, it's a wish list. We need you to say whether or not we can break this wish list into 3 phases,
Right.
so that we can.
That's a good question for tomorrow, Josh. What do they want to see?
I know that answer changes every year, but if we can get something on record from you, we can go back and say, this is what you told me.
Should,
Right. And he'll say, well, that's what they told me, but he changed.
And it just changed last week.
He don't work here anymore.
Yeah.
should we change on the list here where it says South Park? Do we want to put South Park and put boat launch in there, boat ramp, also the words?
That's gonna
encompass that.
I would say.
Okay, I think we should.
Riviera Birch and South Park.
Yes.
With just put
Yeah,
ramp next
Yeah,
to it in
boat ramps.
parentheses.
I have it on mine. I just wanted to make sure we added to this one too.
okay, Tim, did you put up there, is that where the drills, the old oil wells are?
Yeah, so this
Red.
shows the whole area. There are some up here in the river area.
Oh, yes.
This is a little bit clearer presentation because on this one, you still have an active well over here, so it is showing up differently.
So are those actual wells or those test holes?
Those are plugged wells.
Holy moly.
So when you're running an excavator over it, you just rip the cap off.
Okay, fun.
All of those
They
are
have to know where those are too, yeah.
Well,
There's still one that's running.
Everything-
Everything we're looking at is on shore and the areas we're gonna dredge.
Uh-huh.
nothing really looks really serious. The one out where Lake Isabella
here.
is outside of that peninsula, I think.
I think
Is
you're
there
right.
anything up
Tom.
north, Tim, or?
So that one, I got the other map. Sure.
So we need to add that to.
Isn't there working well out there yet, Tim?
Yeah, it's why this box here is orange. The Van Hoyst property is working well, right about.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, it's back
It's right, yeah, there's one.
behind those lagoons.
And, they just capped this one a couple years ago.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, there was a very active oil and gas field. The old railroad that used to run through
Right
here
through
at
there.
Union Station. There was a siding over here where they used to keep a tanker car that they would haul out like every second or third day because it would be full of oil and, that's. That was forties and fifties, that type of frame. Yeah, I mean, we had a very active oil and gas industry just immediately to our west.
To go back to that millage thing. Tim said three's probably more acceptable sell, 3.5 probably not. Under 3.25, that's another.
And here's why I frame it that way. The feedback that we got on the 275 for the combined projects was they didn't want the dog trail, they didn't want trail, they didn't want that. None of that pushback was on the amount of the ask. But that ask was two different projects. It was 60% dredging and 40% recreation. You go back to them with essentially the same ask, but it's all going to the dredging. The higher you get on that, the more it almost looks like you've got too much of a wish list and,
Yeah.
you need to have a more concrete focused plan.
We've got a much bigger scope of the
Correct.
restoration we're doing
Yeah.
also.
So what people know is 60% of 2.75 mils, would be,
Was gonna cover this amount of work here.
Yeah. for 1.5.
Yeah.
1.5 roughly, so that's all that really was representing the dredging in their minds at that point in
And
time.
that was just the base.
Yeah, and that, but they don't really know that.
Haven River.
Oh, the river,
Yeah.
River and the base.
And so they really don't know that, and so what, so we're doubling the ask per se.
We do have comments online when you get to public comments, so.
Okay, cool.
Well,
Public comment, see what they got.
Yeah. What's the verdict on the Queensway Drive part? Are we gonna scale that down? That's a pretty good size project.
Yeah, that was back down.
It's got 150,000 part.
Okay.
That 10,000 yards or something like that.
13.3 if it wasn't.
If we can scale that down to 10, that'd be a wonderful thing.
Hey, when I talked to Bill, because that was one of the areas,
Scale that down to 3.
well, it was one of the areas that Bill walks when the water's down doing they have muscles.
Most of the muck is on the west side of the river.
But some of that's not our cover.
And, yeah, I know. But that's where the muck is, on the west side of the river. The river runs pretty close to the east bank. And you can pretty much walk that. I mean, there's some spots where it's soft, right up close, a little area here and there, but, the worst part is where they park the boat. It's about a 300 foot area. And it's mucky.
Very monkey. Cattails, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, we could get that under
That's the
10.
worst spot, and it's on the east side of the river. The rest of it is, most of it's high bank.
We should be able to get that under 10,000 easily.
Yeah, you can do it under
Brent, they get
3,000.
three.
You can do under 3,000.
He just said 3 earlier, when he was just thinking about it.
I'll correct that.
Bill's only dealt with dirt like his whole life. So, probably knows.
Yeah,
Well, there's an epitaph for you.
He dealt with dirt all his life. Now he's done something. Break that down.
Wow.
Make sure it's-
So like 35,000 then for a budget on that?
If you're using what, that 1250 number, I think
$11.
$11.
So I kind of just like round it up to the next kind of whole number for overages and stuff?
You just split it to half, make it to half, make it 5,000, make it 5,000 years. Cause I think what Bill's saying is where that steep hill is, that's. Okay, it's when you get farther north or farther, north upstream. Where boat spark is where it's bad.
There's a ladder in there.
You just hit that area.
It starts in the bottom of that area.
I might have a photo of that.
So we can discuss that.
So we pretty much beat these two topics to death when we opened up the public comments. I mean, we've got people here in the audience. We'll start right over in the corner. If you have a question, any questions? Anybody have questions? Name and address?
John Shear, 1002 Carmen Drive. For both George and you, the comments, questions. I know last time when we had the millage, do you remember what we were planning on dredging out of the river, out of Riviera?
It hasn't changed.
It was more than 7,000 yards.
It's not the same one we're talking about, I don't think. I think
You know,
there's.
He might
there's some-
find out what Queensway Park.
There's the hydraulic and the mechanical.
Well, basically, because you mentioned 13,000. I got when you were figuring,
What was your address again, young man?
1202 Carmen Drive.
That's right, the 350, we got a reference.
I got an estimate, not a true bid. I got an Estimate of 350,000
Right,
for that. And it was,
Dollars.
yes, seems like it's 11,000 cubic yards, something like that.
yeah, because I'm saying the map shows 7. So
Oh.
that's why I was questioning.
He's just showing, that's hard for him to do that on here because
Well,
This-
the yardage is calculated off of.
this is going 1 cubic yard. Well, that's 2 cubic yards deep. You see what I mean?
Well, I know
Well, that
that.
would be times 2 right there.
Mhm.
So.
Well, I'm
Then you go out
running.
and-
well, I've been standing in it before.
Yeah,
Not to my pleasure.
And some of that area. May be adjusted because there is a property line that runs through there,
Right.
so we're doing everything back to the east side of that.
Oh,
that
I
line.
agree. Forget the west side.
Yeah, I don't wanna spend money on somebody that doesn't.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, you can pick it up and dump it on the west side. But,
This is good fishing out there, huh?
yeah, no, well, I'm saying you're clear, you're getting so much closer to shore. Your, how your comments were about 3 and 3.5 on the millage. I think 3, I believe it'll pass. 3.5, it's gonna be a push. And how everybody said before, and I know you guys are sincere about it, we'll end the millage sooner, you know, we finish sooner. But most people are very skeptical about government and spending. If we got the money, we're not gonna, don't matter what party you're in. You know, well, if they got it, now they're gonna,
My personal belief, by looking at this map, is I don't think it will sunset, I think you're gonna need
I believe,
all that to get it.
yes, because as you said, in times, right, it's gonna go up
I mean, the perfect
as you
world,
keep going
yeah,
up.
but I don't think, we don't live in a perfect world.
The only redeeming feature about the additional millage is you can get the front end done faster,
Oh, yes.
which would, in a perfect world, be cheaper because the inflation wouldn't
Mhm.
get taken for a ride.
Yeah, that'll.
But- Right, oh, I understand that, I'm just trying to get. The biggest, as you guys already said, the biggest problem is the river, and the river is causing the lake. So you do as much as you can in the river.
Yep.
To stop that, and if down the way, you might have to cut back on the lake a little bit. A bay or a cove or whatever,
That's why, I think that's why we're trying to give,
you know,
now ranges, because
right,
again, until a dirt hits the shovel hits the dirt. You know, these are all averaged out at roughly 3 feet deep, and there's areas that are gonna be more than that, areas that could be less than that, so.
like I said, I was probably 3 feet deep in the middle by that island.
Dave King, 1118 Queensway. I don't think Birch Park is as bad as you might think it is,
I think that,
but I know the boat landing's there.
I think that map I have on there, Dave, on that big map. I drew it out, you know, maybe 50 feet, 100 feet from shore. I personally think that's just gonna be a smaller path to get out from the back, otherwise.
So do you save money by keeping it under 10,000 for
Correct.
one area?
You don't need a special
You
EPA.
might be able to there.
And that's money that can be used
Cause we take,
somewhere
for
else.
instance, like what you said, 125 foot swath straight east off from the ramp, right out in the middle of the bay, that'll clean up quite a bit.
Well, it gives everybody a way to get in and out. And I mean, I understand there's houses.
There might be some speedboaters that don't agree with me,
Well, it should, you can't speed go to there anyway.
right?
It's supposed to.
I don't want to call her prop putting their boat back on the trailer too, but oh well.
Causes boat landing problem.
So you got Dave?
Yep.
1014 Carbon Drive, right across the street from Riviera. And, well, I just want to make a couple of comments if that's okay.
Yep.
Where the gentleman here said about eyeballs,
What was your name, young man?
Leo Manette. What this gentleman said about eyeballs is really a good, point. Where does everybody come in through when they come into, the, association here? Where do they come through to? Queensway usually, right? The first park they see is what? Birch. And so like the gentleman said here, if they see something going on, might just get some people excited.
Well, it's important for people to see that we're actually doing something with their money.
Exactly, well, that's what I'm saying, where it's visible.
Yep.
Where it's visible, not at South Park or these other places where nobody's gonna see it unless they're on the lake.
Yep.
That was, one of my
Away.
I think there's some way we need to get it out to the public nicely that this is it. I mean, there's
Yeah,
nobody's gonna come in and help us out or anything. This is,
yeah,
if this isn't voted on, the lake's gonna stay the same.
Yeah, we're
It's gonna get
running.
more
we're running
If it's not
out.
voted, yes.
yeah, and just another thing, I just,
10 years down the road.
I just think that if you put it on the information, what everybody's gonna pay per household, or like you were saying, you're breaking it down, instead of just putting a big number, 3.5 mil, you know, break it down, what am I gonna have to pay? What am I gonna
Yeah,
have
it's
to,
basically $300 for $100,000.
I understand that, but if you just put it out there like what it's gonna look like on the ballot,
Right.
you know, everybody's gonna say, well, that's a big number. What does that mean to me?
In the newsletter, there'll be a chart in there, say if you're.
And that's what I'm saying, that's what I'm saying,
You'll pay X.
and that's all I'm saying.
It might not be, I don't know if we can put that on, I don't know if you can really put that on a ballot. You know, people, some people get the newsletter and.
I understand, well, it's there.
Added reference.
Language was in this package.
Right on the front page.
And
It's
we
just like the
encourage you
people,
to come to the annual meetings.
that's just like people who complain about the last stuff, and they never came to a meeting to hear what was going on, so.
Well, I mean, some places there are, we've seen at previous meetings, but we don't see a lot of new faces, so I mean.
Right.
If you can encourage your neighbors to get involved and help them understand what they're getting for it, that.
Without spreading rumors.
I went to the garage sales last year to promote that, so.
And if they're against it, give them a different date for the vote.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
David is on TikTok.
That was the audience member.
What was the address again?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Let's almost stop by here.
Somewhere near Birch Park.
There any more comments? Yeah, Tim left. There was some online.
Oh, he's gone.
No, he'll be back.
Back. So is there any more? We can go back to the member comments when Tim comes back and get into it.
Yeah.
You guys have anything else you wanna?
When's the next meeting, since I don't know?
So we've been doing it every other Wednesday.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but I, nobody told me.
No, we gotta do that.
No.
So I think we scheduled it last time.
Scheduled to that. It's a week from now.
April 26th.
Norm,
Yeah.
we have some questions online. Tim isn't here, so I'm gonna read these.
But,
It says Norm is hard to understand.
sorry.
Red, white?
Todd's wife.
You're not supposed to tell that, George.
Oh, does the budget and forecast take into account potential future cost increases for testing, dredging, and trucking?
No,
No, it does
Way to
not.
do that.
It's impossible.
we don't know what that number will be.
We don't know what the number will be yet.
That's part of why we'd like to ask for more, just because we know it's going to be higher. That's the only thing publicly say.
I agree with going with a higher millage of 3.5 to get more done earlier. Tell people the original ask would have. Tell people what the original ask would have covered first, what the new expanded version is.
Oh, good idea. Explain how it's different.
From the bond proposal we
That
had.
was the 1.5 mil that we were just talking about
60%,
compared
yeah,
to.
yeah.
So do you still have a map of that original
Yes.
proposal you were trying to put
I
forth?
think-
last
I
time?
have that big cardboard map in my office, you know.
So let's maybe bring that back to the next meeting and show people this is what originally we were gonna do 2 years ago, and this is what we're hoping to do now. So I can see the two differences and where we're trying to accomplish more.
Pretty much just the river, wasn't it?
So we have the river,
And a couple of
the
days.
bays,
Couple of days, not all.
no, and then,
Or I think.
down across in front of,
Whispering.
Whispering Pines,
Yeah.
South Park. But they weren't in scale, the same scale.
Right. It
We
was
were
about-
talking, 900 cubic yards here instead of 16.
Well, it was less than half of this.
It was about, I figured it was gonna be about 1.1.
I believe we're also deeper now than we were before. I don't think we were going as deep,
No, we were going, that was about 18 inches.
right?
Right.
18 inches is not enough to do.
No, and,
Right.
and the,
So that makes it a
the
regular yard right there.
the Peninsula project wasn't in there at all.
Correct.
So basically, the difference would be the Peninsula Drive project was added, and we have accounted for being twice as depth.
Right, at least twice a depth. Correct,
Twice as deep and more bays.
So hopefully that answers that question.
yes.
Okay, what else you got in there?
That is it.
Okay, we'll have our next meeting for the 26th, same time, 4 P.M.
Thank you.
We're gonna go ahead and close the meeting, and what time is it?
524.
5:24.